Hey, this isn't writing excuses. You do not have an excuse, so go write. Don't watch this video even, it is bad. When we talk about writing, we often talk about the perspective that writers will give their viewers in relation to their work. The most commonly used of these in this day and age is third-person limited, which is when you see the inner thoughts and ideas of a specific character that is in a scene, but also at the same time they are referred to in third person. Very common also is the first-person narrator, which it'll not be he did this, but I did this. But you'll have the same level of having access to that person's inner thoughts. Usually it'll be written in a much more colloquial style and have more of a potential to feature an unreliable narrator, but at its core it's very similar. It's a lot more common in fiction that is made for younger readers, and I have personally always found it a little bit grating, but never to the extent where I was like, I can't read this book. And I think a big reason for this is that in third person limited, you can and often do switch perspectives from character to character between chapters or parts of chapters, or even sometimes if paragraph to paragraph if it's like an action scene that moves very quickly and has a lot of important characters in it. And I really like it when that happens because I like seeing things from many different angles. When you do that in first person, it can be very confusing. And then of course there is the omniscient narrator who, though they are not focused on a particular person, they do refer to everyone in the third person, but they also know the inner thoughts and emotions of everyone. This used to be a lot more popular than it is now. It's sort of fallen into disfavor. There's very few books that actually pull it off well, like this one, for instance, does it very well. And it's understandable because it doesn't work very well for a lot of different kinds of plots. Like if you have a mystery plot and the murderer is in the room and you just don't tell the audience that they are the murderer, then they will feel cheated because you had insight into all the other characters and you had insight into this particular character for other things. So how is it that you didn't tell them about this? I'm not saying that can't be pulled off, and there's probably even a few stories where that is a very cool thing that you could pull off if you inform the audience, no, the murderer's right here. This is the guy that everybody trusts. The nice, friendly person that everyone like, oh, and he's killed someone else. But what I'm saying is it's so difficult to do that there isn't really much of a point to doing it aside from the bragging rights. There are, of course, a lot of other perspectives that you can take in your writing. Some people even mix some of them, which I find very brave. But there's one that I want to talk about, and I don't think it has a universally accepted term, but then again, I did not look into this at all. I cannot stress enough how little research I have done for this video, and that I really do not know what I'm talking about. Basically, it's third person, but instead of looking into the head of one person, or looking into the head of all persons, you look into the heads of non-persons. What you read is just the description of the things that are happening which are detectable by regular senses. You can, of course, also, it's body language, facial expressions, the way that a sentence is conveyed, though of course ideally the things that are in the sentence already convey that. And you can write that with a note of judgment in order to more concisely convey the emotions. But you don't know a character's thoughts beyond what they communicate in some manner. I call this third person observant. And that may sound weird at first, however, I will tell you that you have very probably consumed a lot of media that is presented from this perspective. It is, after all, the perspective from which most films and television series are told. Right, even if someone is the protagonist of the show or just that particular scene, you can't really know what is in their head. You might take a fairly good guess because of the, body language and the way that the actor presents the character and the things that you already know about the character, but you don't actually know what they are truly thinking. So, third-person observant is the camera, essentially. And I think this might be a very interesting approach to writing certain kinds of stories, like for instance those which are anchored more to a location than they are to a specific character, like Reservoir Dogs, for instance, a film of course, is anchored primarily to the location of the warehouse and less to the characters. I don't think that the story would even work as well if it were told from the perspective of any or all of the characters. I don't think there are a lot of books like that, but I do think that it could be done. Most information about how a given character feels is conveyed about dialogue anyway, and I do think it could be very useful if you wanted to create a work where you generate a sort of atmosphere wherein the reader feels disconnected from the character, or something maybe very avant-gardistic that sort of has the reader as a sort of character in that. Maybe the reader is I don't know, I'm just spitballing. Or maybe it's a story where you don't have a protagonist at all. Like, especially a lot of television shows, it's not always clear who the protagonist or the protagonists are. The question is, why isn't this more common in writing fiction? Which, I mean, you know, isn't being able what a character thinks and feels directly kind of one of the big advantages that books have over film? Because if you think about it, right, the big advantage of film is that it can convey a lot of information in a very short time frame. Like, you have like an establishing shot of scenery, it's just the shot. It's there, you can also have the visual information, audio information, don't have smell-o-vision yet, but maybe at some point we will have that too. It's a lot easier to hide things in there as opposed to if you were to describe that scenery, even if you're like a good concise writer, if you really want to give a full atmospheric impression of the thing, it might take you 1 or 2 paragraphs to do that, and not like the slim kind of paragraphs, but the one that really should hit the gym at some point. And you have to focus on each aspect that you describe individually, so it becomes more difficult to hide stuff, even though it is of course not impossible. Film conveys information visually, whereas a book conveys the information descriptively. It's pretty much impossible to show the inner world of a character visually, aside from the things that they actually show to an outward observer who is astute at observing people. But books can easily do this. They can just seamlessly introduce context to a situation that will help readers gain a deeper emotional understanding of what is going on. So you might have a scene where you feel like, oh, is there some kind of like weird antagonistic tension between these two characters? And you can just have a small sentence off to the side where, you know, the character remembers something, alludes to something in their memory on how this other character wronged them, and this you could of course do in like a line of dialogue, but to always bring up something in such a situation where there is tension can sort of derail the dialogue as such, because otherwise it would be weird to just gloss over that. It requires a very particular type of person that does this. So the other option you'd have in film is to just like have this scene within a scene that is basically just exposition for information about the relationship that maybe you were going to give people later anyway, but you want some of the context that they have it so they understand it ahead of time. It's tricky to just allude to things visually, is what I'm saying, and having that different scene would just break the flow of the film. The point of stories also is for the readers to build an empathic connection to the characters. That's what makes them care about the characters and what happens to them, what their concerns are. And it's a lot easier to do that if you're actually in a person's head. So really, I think that the reason why something like third-person observant isn't all that common in fiction is because it doesn't play into the inherent strengths of the medium, whereas third-person limited very much does. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's just something that's been floating around my head for way too long time, and I thought finally this time I'm gonna get it out. Maybe this will help you in some way with your writing. It probably won't. I definitely added the time that you spent watching this video to my own because I am a Lovecraftian deity. Thank you very much for watching this video. Like, comment, subscribe, share this to your relevant communities, but do not spam them. Consider supporting me on Patreon or Subscribestar, buying some of my merchandise or my short story collection. I actually do not know if I even pointed vaguely in the correct direction for this because I'm keeping very intense eye contact with the lens of the camera, even though the screen is right next to it. In that spirit, write something, or engage in some other creative pursuit that you like to engage in. They're all cool. Do it commercially, or do it for yourself, do it to become better at it, do it to, you know, get rid of dark emotions from your soul, maybe do it to explore dark emotions in your soul. It really is completely up to you. And see you around, cunts.